pretty sad day for a couple different franchises, for a couple different fan bases, and a bunch of fantasy teams. We'll dive into everything. One, CeeDee Lamb limited in practice again on Thursday. Sounds like Lamb's probably going to play this week. Now, of course, we have some pretty bad Dak news that we'll look at later on. Devonta Smith gets in a limited practice on Thursday. Really good news here. I mean, Wednesday, Smith did not practice with a hamstring. So as a Devonta Smith drafter myself, I was a little bit nervous that I was maybe going to be stuck freaking starting Jalen Waddle this week. But thank God Smith looks like he will be good to go. Dallas Goedert should be good to go as well. Dallas Goedert gets in a full practice today. So will A.J. Brown. To be honest, let me see if they still have that same Jalen Hurts pick on Underdog right now. Just because it did look very appealing if all the pass catchers are good. They actually did move it up a bit earlier today. It was higher, lower, 195.5 yards. Still could be a little bit interesting, but we'll look at that later on. T. Higgins is not going to be playing on Thursday. That was what was expected. I mean, if you were looking at Higgins, of course, Higgins didn't practice at all last week. He didn't practice on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. He wasn't going to play. There's no way that Higgins was getting in here. Now, Trevor Lawrence and Gabe Davis both limited in practice on Thursday. We'll talk about Lawrence a little bit more. So Olave doesn't practice again Thursday. So Olave, you're probably not going to see him this week. I don't think you see him week 11. I don't think he makes it back until at the very minimum after his bye week in week 13. Bye is in 12, of course. Tony Pollard does not practice on Thursday. So this will be very interesting. Obviously, they talked about having to try to go through and manage this Pollard workload effectively. Pollard has had an insane amount of touches this season. This could very easily just be a regularly scheduled rest day for Pollard. Drake London gets in another limited practice on Thursday. The practice on Friday is going to be key here for London. Keaton Mitchell's going to play tonight. I don't think it really matters much at all, to be honest. Pittman doesn't practice again on Thursday. Now, this is a little bit concerning. And let's go through and let's look at my rankings this week. What I actually did with this is we moved Josh Downs up dramatically. Downs right now is directly behind guys like Terry McLaurin, Devonta Smith, and CeeDee Lamb for us in our rankings this week. I think that if you have Josh Downs with a banged up Michael Pittman, with Flacco good to go, in a game environment in which they're going to have to throw the ball against Buffalo, you probably need to go through. You probably need to start them. We have Downs right ahead of players like Dell, Hopkins, Pickens. Obviously, we have a lot to talk about with Dell in just 1 second. Keon Coleman doesn't practice again on Thursday. Sounds like Keon will not play this week. Amari Cooper is trending towards being good to go. So we have moved Amari up to about wide receiver 21. If Keon is officially out and Amari is officially 100%, then at that point, we probably move Amari ahead of like George Pickens. Devonta Smith, good to go, like we already discussed. Adam Thielen doesn't practice again on Thursday. So this does make it where Leggett is a little bit more interesting. I think if I have Pierce Hall in the Flock League myself, but to be honest with you, I'd probably start Leggett over him if you have no Thielen in this game. I'd probably start Leggett over Rome. We'd probably put Leggett, honestly, still in the range of guys that we want to bench, right? You're only starting if you're desperate because of the buys. Jonathan Brooks gets in a full practice, but obviously we'll talk about what happened with Chuba Hubbard. So this is really concerning. Everything that I've read makes it seem like there is a possibility that we don't see Dak Prescott back again this season. So McCarthy comes out and says that Dak's still collecting information, different opinions on the hamstring. Regardless, they're putting Dak on the IR. Dak's not going to be playing over the next 4 weeks. And if we just try to realistically go through and look at this, the Dallas Cowboys right now are 3-5. You map out their next few weeks. They're over touchdown dogs to the Eagles. We can assume that they lose to the Eagles this week. It's hard to imagine them beating Houston with no Dak Prescott next week. It's hard to imagine them being favored against the Commanders with no Dak. There's a very real possibility that the Cowboys drop the next 3 weeks. The Cowboys drop the next 3 weeks and they're at 3-8. there's really no incentive for Dak Prescott to rush himself back in here. So again, I want to reiterate, if you have CeeDee Lamb, we can go look at my rest of season ranks. But if you have CeeDee Lamb here, and you could pivot over to some of these other names, such as Malik Neighbors would be a no-brainer. I've seen a lot of trades in the live stream as of late. People able to go get Tyreek Hill by trading away CeeDee Lamb. For the love of God, do it. I understand Lamb's been much better than these options so far this season. And Lamb was my wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2 before the Dak injury and before Lamb's injury himself. But again, similar to what we said, as soon as Tua went down with Devon Achane, when the quarterback goes down and you see the offensive projections fall dramatically, even if you have an elite fantasy asset in that offense, that player is going to be severely impacted. And that applies to CeeDee Lamb here. So go trade him for Neighbors if you can. Go trade him for Tyreek if you can. I haven't seen anybody able to trade him for St. Brown, A.J. Brown. Obviously, the Rams guys could be in play as well if you wanted to make that pivot. Now, Khalil Herbert going to play today. Keaton Mitchell going to play today. Doesn't make a difference either way. For the love of God, if you have Chase Brown, make sure you're starting Chase Brown. Like going through and looking at our Week 10 rankings for Brown here. This is a running back that we have as a low-end RB1. You have to get him in. Khalil Herbert's going to be active. This team really doesn't have any running back depth. They kind of have to force Khalil Herbert in here. But it's not like Herbert's going to have some massive role by any stretch of the imagination. So Trevor Lawrence continues to get treatment and weigh options for the future. So Lawrence is unlikely to play Week 10. For this, we did go ahead and we dramatically moved Brian Thomas down our rankings this week. We're now, instead of viewing him as that absolute must-start wide receiver 1 that you just absolutely jam in, here we have moved him down to the range of flex consideration. I think Brian Thomas Jr. is right in the same range as like Ladd McConkey, Darnell Mooney, Khalil Shakir at this point. Now, of course, rest of season, if Trevor Lawrence does come back here, then at that point, Brian Thomas Jr. is still a significantly better option than where he's at in the rankings this week. But it will be something that you need to continue to monitor because how things stand right now, we are getting a lot of mixed signals and mixed opinions. But I actually just got a call from the boss. We have a special guest. Cannot wait for y'all to be introduced. Drum roll, please. You actually have seen this special guest appear in the Flock League multiple times. Welcome, Miley. Oh my goodness. I thought I heard you out there. I thought I heard you. You wanted to tell everybody hi? Say, guys, don't worry if you had Trevor Lawrence. Don't worry if you had Brian Thomas. You still have me. You still have me. There you go, baby. All right, so let's get this back over. I apologize for that. But anyway, going on, Chuba Hubbard signs a $33 million extension here. What the hell, Panthers? The Panthers are just so damn bad at this, right? I'm legitimately convinced that you give a 12-year-old who's good at Madden the Carolina Panthers, and they would be able to run a better organization than this. You go through, Chuba Hubbard's presumably the only talented player in your offense. You decide anyway to spend a second-round pick on Jonathan Brooks. Right before Jonathan Brooks comes back from the torn ACL, you decide to get Chuba Hubbard $33 million. So to be honest with you, seeing this type of team investment, it's not going to like dramatically change my mind, right? I still expect Jonathan Brooks to come in this week. I still expect that it's probably going to turn into a pseudo running back by committee in a pretty bad offense. But seeing them go out there and give this man $33 million, at this point, you got to have Chuba Hubbard over Jonathan Brooks in the rest of season ranks. Obviously, Hubbard was over Brooks in the rankings for this week regardless. But just absurd to see this level of commitment. I mean, you're already paying Miles Sanders a crap ton of money, and you just drafted Jonathan Brooks in the second round. Now going through and, oh, I'm sorry. We actually did not talk about the impact of Evan Ingram with the Lawrence injury. And that is something that we should probably go through and tinker with as well. Evan Ingram obviously got the bump big time here if you were taking into consideration the fact that Christian Kirk goes down with the guaranteed targets that Evan Ingram has. But if Lawrence is banged up at this point, I think you do have to slide Ingram down these rankings a bit. I think I'd probably rather have Kincaid over Evan Ingram at this point. He's still going to be funneled targets, right? So I think that he is safe in a full PPR format. I mean, going through and looking at our weekly rankings, do we really move Ingram down here that much? Probably we do. Like, I'd probably rather start Gesicki over Ingram this week. But I'd honestly probably rather start Gesicki over Pitts. But still probably start Evan Ingram, but definitely lowered expectations of just the offense going to be worse with no Lawrence. Now, let's move this over to our next updates. Baker Mayfield doesn't practice on Wednesday. He didn't practice on Thursday either, but expectations are that Baker is going to be good to go. But I think we talked about all the updates that we have here, and we showed you how we updated those rankings as well. So let's go ahead. Let's dive into some of the questions that we have on the site. Obviously, we have a bunch of questions to look at here. I definitely want to reiterate, if you ever wanted to send any questions to get answered on the live stream, you could always go over to flockfantasy.com. If you hit that button in the top right corner that says personal advice, you can then send in a super message, start sit question, trade question, or a team review, whatever you are wanting. If you wanted the team review, I'd highly recommend taking advantage of the offer that we have on Underdog Fantasy, or if you go over to Underdog Fantasy and use promo code FLOCK, you're going to be getting a 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000 plus a free pick when you sign up. If you sign up before the game tonight, that'll be a free Lamar Jackson pick, more than less than half a total yard. And on top of that, you'll be getting a free team review in the live stream we're doing every single night. Just make sure that you set up an account on flockfantasy.com with the same email address as your account on Underdog Fantasy. And I don't know how we forgot to say this, but yes, looks like Nico Collins is going to be missing this week. We already removed Nico Collins from my Week 10 rankings. And at the same time, rest of season here, I did move Nico Collins down just a bit. If you want to look at my rankings, hit sort by Mason Dodd. I moved Nico Collins down to wide receiver 7 in my rest of season ranks, because comparing him to some of these other options, now not only do you have no Nico Collins in Week 10, but also keep in mind he does have the bye week as well. But let's go ahead and let's dive into this first question from Newton's Law. Here, this is a trade where we are sending Kincaid to pivot over to Njoku, lateral move / upgrade, up to you with what you want to call it. Going from Kyler to James Cook, give me James Cook relatively easily. You're paying Dowdle, which doesn't make a big difference. And we already have Jaden Daniels on this team. So for sure, we are going to want the James Cook side here. I think it's a very unique and well-constructed deal to just end up getting the best player. Okay. Now let's go over to our next question. Lokon coming out says, I'm 5-4, feeling bold to win this whole thing. Did we win this deal? Okay. First thing is, Cooper Kupp over the past few weeks has been better than Tyreek Hill. There are about to be 1,000 people in the live chat that want to remind everybody of that. And I already know that we should just get out of it, and we should just say that now. But fantasy football obviously isn't just about figuring out who's been the better option in the past. It's trying to project out into the future what is going to happen here. And for me, going into the future, I would rather have Tyreek Hill with the expectation we get some positive regression, while at the same time, Cooper Kupp, you are going to be seeing the addition of Puka Nacua into this offense as a full-time player, taking targets away. So for me, I view Tyreek as an upgrade over Kupp. This is a league in which depth matters a little bit more based off the league settings. Wide receiver depth, we have Amari, Tank Dell, Leggett, Romeo Dobbs. We have 3 viable running backs. So, I mean, it's a fine deal to go get Tyreek Hill. If this was like a 2 wide receiver, 1 flex, shallower format, then there I'd very much like it. Here, I think it's maybe a little bit tougher because Ridley actually may have a little bit of value in this league, but still for me, Tyreek is the best player. Now, Official Rob coming out with our next question. This is going to be a start-sit one here. We are going to go ahead and we are going to be firing in DeAndre Hopkins, where if you are looking at Hopkins, well, yes, it's a tough matchup. Still, we are going to assume that you continue to see more and more snaps played. Not only do you get more and more snaps played, but at the same time, this is an offense that consistently, including this week, projects out to be a higher scoring offense than the league average. Going down to the flex, we have no Jacobs this week. We have no Chubb this week, so wouldn't even be able to consider a running back here for this flex. Going over to what you have at wide receiver, it's really going to come down to Ladd or Waddle. And we are going back and forth with this last week. I finally decided, okay, we're going to play Ladd over Waddle. Then I freaking traded away Ladd and then had to play Waddle anyway. Well, I know for a damn fact at this point we play Ladd McConkey. Khalil Shakir is close to Ladd in my mind. Shakir would actually be the backup option because obviously you have no Keon Coleman this week. Now, Syrup Sandwich is coming out with our next start set. Here, wide receiver, Tank Dell, DeAndre Hopkins is very close. Obviously, you're in a spot in which Dell, you have no Nico Collins. You have an offense that probably is going to be forced to throw to try to keep up with Detroit's. DeAndre Hopkins, you have a tough matchup, but you have better quarterback play, and presumably you're the better receiver. Very close there. We're definitely playing him over Harrison and Ridley. Probably end up going Dell if you have no Nico. And then down in the flex spot, the best available running back would maybe be Brooks, but we just play the wide receiver anyway. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to play Hopkins here. Okay. And I apologize for that. Let's move this over. Next question coming out from Romulus says Tillman is also an option at the flex. My friend, we have Tillman on the bye week this week. So Tillman ain't going to be able to really save anything here. So looking at quarterback, you have to go Allen. I mean, with Goff, yes, he potentially is in an offense that has slightly better projections this week. But still, at the same time, that offense is going to be able to run the ball a ton. Goff's going to take up 0% of those rushing points, where Allen obviously will account for some of the rushing in his own offense. Going over to the running backs, Chase Brown, auto start. James Conner, DeAndre Swift, Kareem Hunt are all very, very close. Looking at my flex rankings this week, we do have Hunt at 30, Swift 25, Connor 26. You have the Bears as touchdown favorites here. So you can kind of assume that they are able to run the ball in the second half. Maybe make an argument, no, Khalil Herbert makes the difference. Going over to the flex, for the love of... never mind, I'm an idiot. We were going to say, for the love of God, we got to get Bowers in. My monkey brain sees Bowers and just thinks, oh, we have to put him in the lineup. But, of course, he's on bye. I think for the flex, you probably go ahead and you take James Conner. For Kareem Hunt, a little bit of a tougher matchup here, of course, going up against Denver. Now, our next question is going to be a trade coming out from Gvon. Here, this is Bucky and Bijan versus Montgomery, Smith, Lamb. So if Dak and Lamb were both 100%, this would be an absolute no-brainer for us to go through and take the CeeDee Lamb side. Because there at that point, we could go, oh, okay, well, if you're pivoting from, say, from Bijan Robinson to CeeDee Lamb, then at that point, we can call it a pretty clear upgrade. If you're pivoting from Bucky Irving to Devonta Smith, also a very clear upgrade. This deal's a no-brainer. But now that Lamb is more so in the wide receiver 2 category, and you're looking at us trading a mid RB1 with Bijan, to effectively get a couple wide receiver 2s and a low-end RB1. It's still a fair price. It is a league in which depth matters a little bit more. Wide receiver, we have Amon-Ra, Cup, but we have Nico and Olave still injured. We do get Montgomery back. That is serviceable. You go with the Lamb side with the hope that Dak comes back. But I just want to be on record. You do have Bijan now at this point significantly ahead of what you're going to be looking at with CeeDee Lamb. Now, Nick coming out with our next question says, hey, Mason, need some help filling out the roster for this week. Let me know what you think. Thanks. Also, still haven't received that free team review voucher. If you haven't received your free team review voucher and you've waited over 24 hours and used promo code FLOCK on Underdog and made a $10 deposit and set up an account on flockfantasy.com with the same email address, please shoot me an email, mason.at_flockfantasy.com, with all your info so I can make sure we get you hooked up. But let me get you a free start sit question, my friend. Really do appreciate you. I'm going to be excited to check this out for you now. Quarterback, we'll stick with Kyler over Tua. Obviously, Kyler, it's not a great matchup this week, but still at the same time, you at least have the safety of the rushing upside. Going over to tight end, we are going to go Evan Ingram over Andrews. I'm still not expecting us to see a lot of Deontay Johnson this week. Of course, I think Deontay expands here in the long term and probably next week's when we really begin to see his impact on Flowers and Andrews. But still at the same time, even if you have no Lawrence, you are going to be in a spot in which you get a considerable amount of targets flooding towards Evan Ingram with no Christian Kirk. We go Dobbins here as an auto start in the flex. Really, the question is, at this point, if you have no Lawrence, would you want to go through and would you want to potentially pivot off of Brian Thomas and go with Harrison instead? But Dobbins is an auto start. You don't consider benching Dobbins. Now, Travis coming out with their next question. They say 3 wide receiver, 2 flex format. So it's a league in which you can start 5 wide receivers weekly. It's also a 10-team league, so there should be decent options off waivers. Going from Downs to DK Metcalf is a very clear upgrade. We got to move Josh Downs up in our rankings, though. There's no excuse to have Downs this low. I mean, at this point, especially with the Pittman injury, you have to prefer Downs over Waddle, which I guess we already have Downs over Waddle. But who all can we put Downs ahead of here? I'd rather have Downs. I'd rather have JSN obviously just has such a good game. But I'd rather have Downs over Ladd, JSN, Dell, DJ Moore. Rather have him over Olave. I think we could even consider moving Downs a little bit higher than this. But that's besides the point. But Downs to DK Metcalf undoubtedly is still an upgrade in the DK Metcalf direction. Obviously, it sucks that DK Metcalf has to go through the bye week this week, and you won't have Metcalf for this week in particular. But still, at the same time, I mean, Josh Downs has the bye week in week 14, so it's not like you get an extra game out of him. If we're looking at Rico Dowdle, it's painful to say, but it is a spot in which it does make a lot of sense to go through and sell high if we can, with the expectation that it is going to be a much worse offense going into the future. So I probably go with the Metcalf side. I don't love it, but in this league, Rome Odunze could also make a difference just because the depth does actually matter a bit here. But it is a close call for sure. It is close. Now let's move this over to our next question coming out from Koba Bell. Full PPR and full point per first down. Thinking of starting Gesicki. Thank you. Down in the flex spot, I understand wanting to start Gesicki considering the fact that you have no Higgins and at the same time you have no Eric Hall or Eric All. I don't know why I always say Eric Hall. But for sure you have to go ahead. You have to play Tank Dell. Not even really close with the Nico Collins news. For the second flex, this is where things maybe get a little bit tougher. Brooks is not startable. Bigsby's not startable. Rome's not startable. It really comes down to Addison, Rachaad White, and Gesicki. Rachaad White, brutal matchup going up against the Niners. Gesicki, it's a spot where you probably assume that you do have the Bengals forced to throw the ball consistently with how good this Ravens offense is. You have no Higgins. Can we see what the underdog projections are here? I'm sorry, but I really don't want to freaking start a tight end in the flex. Rachaad White, higher, lower, 51.5 total yards. Mike Gesicki, your higher, lower, 52.5 receiving yards. I have to slam the lower here. I'm sorry. We're taking the lower on Gesicki. And then what was the other player in consideration? Addison, you're at 38.5. I guess you can go with Gesicki with all things considered. If Rachaad White was seeing a little more volume with it being a point per first down league, you could go with White. The issue, of course, is just the volume's not there. The man had 3 carries last week. Now, Red Zone Riz coming out. So 6-2. CMC back is making me rethink everything. Thank you. Thank you. Here, quarterback. Obviously, May gives you the rushing upside that Jared Goff doesn't. So despite the Patriots projecting to be one of the worst offenses in the league this week, and despite the Lions being one of the best offenses in the league, this is very close. I still probably go ahead and take Jared Goff, but not an easy call by any means. Going over to what we have at running back, Kamara, CMC, you have to play. All things point to CMC being effectively 100% for this game. We're going to go with Cooper Kupp and then probably. So we know we have to play the other running back in the flex. Everything comes down to do you play Zay Flowers or Josh Downs? Evan Ingram looks to be a lock here. But from what we can tell, it seems like you are not going to be seeing any real usage out of Deontay Johnson this game. He should be extremely limited, which obviously does make you excited for Flowers in that case. But Josh Downs, you have the injured Michael Pittman. Can everybody spam the chat? Would you rather play Zay Flowers tonight or Josh Downs? Flowers against the Bengals or Downs against the Vikings? Or I'm sorry, Downs against the Bills. Played the Vikings last week. All right, and go Flowers or Downs. Please let me know in the chat. We got Flowers. One vote says Mooney. It looks like London's going to play. I don't think you can play Mooney over him. Flowers, Downs, Flowers. Everybody's on Zay Flowers here. You got a couple Downs mixed in. But I think it is close. I think both options look to be very strong this week and games that should be very high scoring. Now, Frank the Tank coming out says, running back, we have Henry, J.K. Chase, Hall, Rico. Wide receiver, Hill, Puka, Pickens, Ladd, and Olave. We are trading away Brees and Ladd to get to Devon Achane. I still view Brees as a must-start running back one every single week, regardless of the matchup. I still view Brees as an elite RB in fantasy. But obviously, Achane has printed 25-plus point weeks every single game that Tua has played this season. while at the same time you do get the extra game out of Achane. Wide receiver, when we have Puka, Pickens, Ladd, and Olave, it does seem like Ladd's probably somebody that's going to be moving the needle. Because you have the Olave concussion, where it does seem like there's a non-0% chance that Olave doesn't play another down of football this season, I would probably go ahead and just hold on to the wide receiver depth instead of unnecessarily moving it. I do have Achane ranked ahead of Brees at this point, but I still view Brees as that elite level piece. I'll probably go Brees and Ladd here. It is very close, though. Now, next question coming out from Freight Train says, we have Chase Brown. Do we improve with this trade? Okay. 100%. Tied in right now, we have Kraft and Laporta. I was talking with someone in the Flock League this week about potentially going through and trying to sell Laporta in a 2-for-1 deal to go get Kittle. My trade fell through, but I mean, here, one thing with Dobbins is while his usage has been phenomenal, I mean, literally couldn't beat it. You do potentially have Edwards taking a few touches with Edwards coming back in. So I'm going to go with the George Kittle side. Nothing really to do with Rachaad White. I'd clearly rather have Dobbins over White. But Kittle's already been tight end one by far this season. And as you get more games with no Ayuk here, I think he extends that lead. Now, Tacoma coming out with our next question. Here, quarterback, we are going to go ahead. We're going to take Daniels over Stroud. Running back, Bijan, Barkley are the auto starts. Wide receiver, Debo and Downs are probably the two players that we go with. Tight end, McBride's an auto start. And then down there in the flex, it really comes down to Ladd and Mooney. I'm going to go ahead. I will take Darnell Mooney. We have consistently seen projections put the Atlanta Falcons as one of the highest scoring offenses in the league pretty much every single week. While at the same time, you do have London banged up some, even if it does seem like he's going to play. I think you can go with the Mooney side. Let's move this over to our next question. Coming out from Ben's Mafia. Here, this is Jones, Dell, London versus Brees, Cup, Smith. Jones to Brees, clear upgrade. London to Cup, give me Cup. Dell to Smith, give me Smith. So I think this is an easy trade in my mind, my guy. I think that you are going through and you're legitimately upgrading every single slot here. So 100% no-brainer. I don't even care what the team looks like. We're trading a running back and two receivers for a better running back and two receivers. No-brainer. Okay, let's move this over and let me answer some of the free questions that we have in the live chat. So please, if you have not done so already, drop your question in the live chat. Hit that like on the live stream. And I'll be happy to try to answer as many as we can. So Cyberdonkey says Kincaid or Gesicki. I would rather have Kincaid over Gesicki rest of season. But if we are just talking this week, I'm going to go ahead. I will take Mike Gesicki with us having no Higgins in this offense. And again, you have no Eric All, who did take some volume there earlier in the year as well. Kerr says, what do we do if we have Brian Thomas? Well, previously, when I didn't really expect there to be any issue with Trevor Lawrence, I thought that Brian Thomas Jr. was a phenomenal buy low candidate. But the fact of the matter is, of course, if Lawrence misses any time, you do have to dramatically lower expectations with pretty much all options in this offense. Now, again, it's not like Lawrence was some elite level quarterback that he was the only reason this offense was being propped up, and Brian Thomas Jr. was, just an average player, and Lawrence was the reason for it. No. But obviously, if the offense gets worse, there should be fewer touchdown opportunities overall. Now, Rasheed coming out with our next question. This is Kupp, Hill, or Debo. I don't know if this means for this week, rest of season. Honestly, it doesn't really matter. I think we're going to go ahead and take Tyreek Hill. Now, I understand that a lot of people wanted to remind me as we rank Tyreek Hill as a tier 1 option this week that Tyreek Hill has been bad. And yeah, 100% agree. Tyreek Hill's been horrendous, right? You go through and you look at what Tyreek Hill did for you in the entire stretch of games with no Tua. Tyreek Hill's a bum the entire time. You look at the 2 games with Tua back in, Tyreek still has not improved. But it's a 2-game sample in reality. I think it's very understandable that he's did nothing without Tua. And with Tua in, I know he's been disappointing. He's looked more like low end wide receiver 2 rather than a true alpha wide receiver 1. But it's a 2-game sample, and we have years of data to look at for Tyreek to be an elite option when Tua's under center. And one of these weeks, it was a very tough matchup going up against Buffalo. So I still view Tyreek as that elite wide receiver 1 that you start every single week. I have him ranked as the top 5 wide receiver rest of season. And to be honest with you, I don't have that much hesitation in saying that either. Nathan says Mike Gesicki or Sam Laporta. For this week, it's Gesicki, and it's not even close. Rest of season, when Higgins comes back into this offense, then at that point, I would probably say Sam Laporta, but that's probably because I obviously drafted Sam Laporta in round 4, and I am just wishful thinking that Laporta is still anything more than just a streaming tight end. Turf Punk says Stafford or Tua. I think right now, if you are looking at sportsbook projections, they do have the Dolphins offense worse than the Rams. Sorry, I was looking at the CMC update. Yep, CMC will be playing this week. Hallelujah, ladies and gentlemen. CMC is officially back. But let's go ahead and let's get back to the questions that we have on the site. And of course, I do want to reiterate, if you ever wanted to ask any questions on the site, you could always go hit the personal advice button in the top right corner. There you can send in a super message, start set question, trade question, team review, whatever you are wanting. If you wanted that team review, you could always take advantage of the offer that we have with Underdog Fantasy as well. It'll definitely be the cheapest way for you to get that team review. If you go over to Underdog Fantasy with the link in the live chat or the link in the description and use promo code FLOCK, you're going to be getting a free Lamar Jackson pick, more than less than half a total yard for the game tonight. And on top of that, you're going to be getting a free team review in the live stream that we're doing every single day. Just make sure that you are setting up an account on flockfantasy.com with the same email address as your account on Underdog Fantasy, and use code FLOCK. Now let's move this over to our next question. This next one is going to be one of those free Underdog team reviews. Excited to check this team out for you. This is going to be the Green Bowl Packers. And for whatever reason, it's not loading right now. We're going to have to try to see if we can load up this next one. We'll get back to the Green Bowl Packers one. It's another free team review from Starve Marvin. Says traded Shaheed and Cooper in week 3 for Olave and Watson for Mooney. So the Olave deal looked great until obviously the concussion. And Watson for Mooney looks good. Week 7 traded Mooney and Madison for Robinson. Dear God. Currently trying to trade Hawkinson, but no luck. Thinking of running with Kittle and Hawkinson since he should be the number 2 receiver for the Vikings. Any ideas? Thank you. Thank you. Going to be super excited to check this out. Great trades. It is a 12-team league where you only start 2 wide receivers and 1 flex, so the wide receiver depth isn't going to be super important. And at the same time, we are the number 1 team in the league analyzer, so it is going to be difficult to come up with too many moves for this team to potentially make. But anyway, looking at what we have at quarterback, we are currently sitting with Lamar Jackson. Obviously, a big reason why we have the best team in this league. A quarterback that we start every single week, regardless of what the matchup is. A quarterback where you don't need a roster. Another, obviously, for the week 14 bye, we'll go ahead and pick someone up. But outside of that, we are chilling. Now, going over to running back, we have an elite RB to build around with Alvin Kamara. We have Brian Robinson. Okay, I thought that other trade was for Bijan. Definitely a lot more reasonable for Brian. Jonathan Brooks, who potentially can do something late in the season. Obviously, it maybe looks a little less likely that that happens after Chuba Hubbard gets $33 million. And then Jordan Mason, Ray Davis are both at this point just premium handcuff backs, right? Not anything more than that. So ultimately at running back, we're fine. We don't have a lot of depth, but we do have the top end studs here with Kamara and Brian Robinson. Going over to what we have at wide receiver, we are currently sitting with St. Brown, Devontae Adams as 2 must-start guys every single week. We have a pretty decent little depth piece with Downs. We have Olave for long-term upside. Obviously, Ricky Pearsall gives us some kind of shot to be something. And then looking at some of these wide receiver depth pieces at the very bottom, they're just like the perfect examples of players that realistically could just never get in your starting lineup. Like, legitimately, what has to happen for you to decide that it's a good idea for us to go through and for us to start Noah Brown? I can't imagine that scenario. So for me, I think really this is obviously the best team in the league. There's not much to say. You're not starting TJ Hawkinson in the flex spot. Don't do that. You're definitely going through and playing someone like Josh Downs instead. Now, with that being said, if nobody's going to trade for TJ Hawkinson right now, I mean, it's kind of understandable for nobody wanting to trade for him. He hasn't done anything. You may end up having to wait for Hawkinson to have an impressive performance, and at that point, go ahead and look to flip him. But in terms of moves that you make today on this team, I just think that we go through and we restructure the bottom end of this roster to get players that could make a difference for our team if their situation were to change. So I would easily cut Noah Brown, and instead I would go pick up Roschon Johnson. And to be honest with you, in a 2 wide receiver, 1 flex league, I don't see how you ever start Demario Douglas here. So I would probably also cut Demario Douglas and I would probably get Trey Benson. Because if you look at Roschon and Benson, well, yeah, you're definitely not starting them anytime soon. If you were to see an injury to the running back in front of them, they can turn into an immediate upgrade there for your flex and make a true difference for you in your lineup. So really, that's the only adjustment that I would be making with this team. I think you have the best team in the league. Obviously, if you could sell Hawkinson, you would. But you are just probably going to have to wait until Hawkinson has a decent performance and somebody's willing to give you something for him later. But I really do appreciate you and really hope I was able to help you out in some way with this. And again, thank you so much for being a member of the flock, my friend. But let's move this over to our next question coming out from It's Chavez, longtime member of the flock. Let me hook you up with a free trade question. That way next time you send something in, it is free. My guy says, just did a trade where I traded Aaron Jones for Debo, and now I'm getting offered this. What are your thoughts? Should I try to get someone like James Conner? So this isn't remotely close. You need to hold on to Puka Nacua here. Puka Nacua is a locked and loaded top 10 wide receiver. And Brian Thomas Jr. at this point has serious concerns post Trevor Lawrence injury. Now, obviously, when we thought Lawrence was good to go, I was saying let's go through and let's buy low on Brian Thomas Jr. Well, now you need a very, very low price point. If you could get like James Conner and Brian Thomas Jr., it definitely would be closer. But honestly, I still think that I would just hold on to the elite asset with Puka here, even if we just lost some running back production. But yeah, maybe if you wanted to make this move, but you have HN and Barkley, right? So it's not even like you need to do this. And yeah, this team doesn't even have. I mean, obviously, if you could sell Puka and get Bijan Robinson, it's a no-brainer, but that team's probably not going to do it. But for the love of God, yeah, do not be selling Puka for Brian Thomas Jr. at this point. Now, let's move this over to our next question. Coming out from Daniel. Says, I need help at quarterback, tight end, and a flex. Thanks for everything. Thank you, my friend. Here, looking at quarterback between Kyler and May. I'm going to go Kyler. It's a tough matchup. Both quarterbacks have rushing upside. But if you look at sportsbooks at the moment, they are currently projecting out a significantly more points in the Arizona offense than what you have in New England. Going down to tight ends. Tight end, we're between Ingram and Gesicki. I would go Gesicki now that you have no Lawrence. If Lawrence was good to go, then my answer would have been a little bit different here, of course. Going over to the flex here, David Montgomery is just a locked and loaded starter every single week. Really, you're not going to make any adjustments until you get Mike Evans back. And then at that point, obviously, we'll have a conversation. But for now, you just go ahead and you play Montgomery. Now, no one is coming out with our next team review. This is actually an ESPN league. So, my guy, you should be able to link this with the site for completely free. But anyway, excited to dive into it. It says, hey, Mason, thanks for the 3 years of advice. 4-5 and looking to see how I'm doing for the rest of the season. Just traded away McBride to get James Conner and Dallas Goedert. Have an offer to receive Jamar and Dobbins if I trade away CMC. Should I look at either trade or should I just suit up and relax? So obviously we had CMC as the buy low candidate. I want to say maybe 3 weeks ago at this point. And I definitely stand by. I think CMC comes in. He is a running back one here in the long term, of course. Now, with that being said, there is still inherently some risk. It's not like it's a guarantee that McCaffrey comes back and he's exactly who he was before the injury. It's 100% a possibility. It definitely could happen. But if you're looking at, say, getting Jamar Chase and J.K. Dobbins for McCaffrey, Chase is wide receiver one right now. So to be honest with you, I think you are offloading a lot of the risk if you make that pivot. So for me, I actually probably would go get Chase and Dobbins. This is a 10-team league. We do start 2 receivers and 2 flex spots. So picking up the additional little depth there does make some sense. Looking at the roster, we are just freaking loaded. Obviously, we're streaming quarterbacks right now, but we should be in a good spot here in the long term. We have Darnold and Jordan Love. So once Love's through the bye, then at that point, Love probably goes back to the quarterback that we're playing every single week. He's definitely not on the Mount Rushmore, the 4 quarterbacks that give you the rushing upside. But still somebody that we can start weekly. Going over to running back. This is where we are taking the cake. We freaking have CMC, Taylor, James Conner, James Cook. So we get to start 4 running backs that every single week give you guaranteed volume and a 3-down workload. Insane. Wide receiver, we have viable options with Hopkins, Terry. Tight end, we have Gesicki. I think Gesicki is a really strong option in the short term. In the long term, maybe you have some concerns when Higgins is back in. But we have Dallas Goedert here in the long term as well. we have Taysom Hill. So, a couple different things with this. One, I think you probably cut Taysom. I don't know if you can justify rostering 3 tight ends. If you have a viable running back that's maybe an injury away from making a difference, such as Ray Davis on the waiver wire, I would cut Taysom Hill, and I would go ahead and I'd just pick up the extra running back. Because obviously you can make an argument Goddard's your long-term option. Gesicki's our short-term option. And I don't necessarily know if we need to be rostering 3 tight ends. The second thing is it probably does make a lot of sense to go and trade CMC with how strong you are at running back if it means that we are going to be getting Chase and Dobbins. To go and look at the other move that you could potentially make here. We just traded away McBride for Connor and Goddard. That deal I don't love as much, knowing that we are about to make this other one. Because honestly, the other trade that I would want to make is potentially going and getting either the elite quarterback or the elite tight end once we have that depth. So I think we make this deal where we send CMC for Jamar Chase and J.K. Dobbins. And then at that point, if you could potentially turn around and make a 2-for-1 deal where you send Dobbins and Jordan Love and you go get a quarterback on the Mount Rushmore, where you go get Lamar Jackson, you go get Jalen Hurts, you go get Josh Allen, that's probably what I would be looking to do. And yeah, this is a very strong team. I understand why we are 4-5. Obviously, we dealt with the CMC injury. We dealt with the Jonathan Taylor injury. But getting those players fully healthy, going into the future, this roster just has so much damn value on it. But I really do appreciate you and really hope I was able to help you out in some way with this. Again, thank you so much for being a member of the flock, my friend. And really hope I was able to help you out in some way here. Now let's move this over to Travis. Says counter with Kelsey DK or give away Rico Downs Ferg. I don't so okay, here's Travis's question. So it's a 3 wide receiver, 2 flex, full PPR. We're sending Dowdle Downs for DK Rome. And the follow-up question on this is counter with Kelsey DK and give away. I would prefer this for sure. I would send this counter. I still think I would possibly consider making the initial deal. But if you're telling me that somehow you could potentially go through and swing it in a way where you can trade away Rico Downs and Ferguson to get to DK Metcalf and Travis Kelsey, it would be an absolute no-brainer, my friend. Now moving this over for CF Sandoval. Here at running back, Chase Brown, an absolute auto start. We have a ton of strong running backs here, though. Going down to what we have in the flex. First off, do not start Lamb over Cup. Please go Cup over Lamb, to be honest. And I'd probably go with the running back in a good offense with James Cook over Lamb as well. Like, I think you need to lower expectations kind of in a big-time way here if you're looking at what you're going to get with Lamb. Like, this is a garbage offense. Right now, the implied team total, last I checked, I want to say was maybe 17 points here for Dallas. There's almost no reason to roll with anybody in Dallas at the moment. Unless you just have to. Now, moving this over to our next question. This one coming out from Wavy. It's a trade question. It says, want to move DJ before the deadline and get a more consistent flex. We have Jacobs and Saquon as our running backs. Who is the more consistent flex here? Are you telling me Calvin Ridley's the better option? Or are you telling me that Rachaad White's the better option? Because for me, if you look at my ranks, I think DJ Moore is the best player in this deal. Now, it's not by a wide margin by any means. But I think I would prefer the DJ Moore and Nick Chubb side. I don't view either. I don't know. I don't view Rachaad White as a must-start player. I don't view Calvin Ridley as a must-start player. Can y'all please let me know if I'm wrong in the live chat right now? Can you please spam in the chat who you would prefer? Would you rather have Nick Chubb, DJ Moore, or Rachaad White, Calvin Ridley? Nick Chubb, DJ Moore, or Rachaad White, Calvin Ridley? Because obviously I could be wrong here. Okay, we got Moore, Ridley, Moore, White, Moore, Ridley. JN, happy to see you, my guy. Moore, Ridley, Moore. It looks like the vast majority of people are on the DJ Moore, Nick Chubb side. So it's not that like I'm in so much love with DJ Moore and Nick Chubb that you just absolutely have to hold on to them. But it's more so about you being in a spot in which you're not getting back a consistent flex. So I'm fine going through and sending those two players in a 2-for-1 deal to get that guy that you can call an every week flex starter. Okay. Legend says, I sent a question yesterday for players I don't have. Okay. Well, let's dive into the players we do have. We're going to go Kyler, quarterback. Running back, we're going to be going with Brees and Gibbs as the auto starts. Wide receiver, A.J. Brown and Terry McLaurin, Devonta Smith are pretty close. Probably end up starting both of them, to be honest. Tight end, we go with McBride. And then down in the flex, I think you got to go CMC, dear God. Really, the only question here is, effectively, do we start Devonta Smith or Terry McLaurin? I'm not going to fault you for wanting to go in either direction. Obviously, Terry has been phenomenal post the first 2 weeks. But Devonta Smith, every single week, minus the Giants game, he has given you 15 or 20 fantasy points. But you have Dallas Goedert coming back into this offense. I think you very much can go back and forth between Terry and Smith. I probably go with Terry with the consideration that Goddard probably does take a few of these Devonta Smith targets. Wazy, happy to see you, says, I need handcuffs and a solid flex for the playoffs. Only problem is I'm 5-4 and in 7th in a 6-team playoff. So going from Kraft to Gesicki. Gesicki is the upgrade here. Now, of course, you can make an argument that, he's only an upgrade in the short term. You go ahead and you look at the long term when Higgins comes back in, blah, 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 blah. It's definitely a very interesting spot. Because you go DJ Moore to Mike Evans, it's a massive upgrade. Bigsby's pretty much just a handcuff back. Mason's pretty much just a handcuff back. I'm going to go with the Mike Evans side. It's tough if you're saying that obviously we're not guaranteed for the playoffs here. But even in a situation where you're not guaranteed the playoffs, Mike Evans is just such a massive upgrade over DJ Moore that it just frankly may not matter. Where you may just have to run with it regardless. Okay, so let's move this over to our next question. This is another question coming out from Wazy. Says, could also do Akers as a handcuff. Don't care about that at all. It makes zero difference to us. Here, going from DJ Moore to Pittman is a downgrade. We don't even know if Pittman's going to be playing anytime soon. But Nick Chubb, going and getting Aaron Jones is a no-brainer, as well as the fact that Aaron Jones is already through the bye week. Looking at the team here as well, if you were a playoff team where you were guaranteed your spot already, I think that I would probably make an argument that it would make more sense for you to go ahead and for you to prioritize grabbing the upside that you have for Evans at the end of the year with the Evans deal. But considering instead that this is a team that's not in the playoffs and we have to win to get in, I think I probably prefer Aaron Jones. The Aaron Jones deal between the two. But let me go ahead and refresh and get some more of our questions in here. This is one of those free team reviews coming out from R. Smithers. This is Green Bowl Packers. This is a Dynasty Superflex 10-team league. Not a super big Dynasty league in terms of depth. Depth really doesn't matter here. And everything that you are doing, we are trying to optimize for players at the very top end, which is very different than the majority of Dynasty leagues. And assuming that these rookie picks are correct, you're in a spot in which you are highly, highly incentivized to go through and try to win right now. And we don't particularly care about the long-term upside. Here we have Mahomes and Dak, which friggin' sucks on a contending team where we've already traded away our 2025 first. Because obviously, now at this point, Dak slated to miss a large chunk of the season. I don't think you make any panic moves right now just because we do have Mahomes holding us down. But I think you could if we get word that I don't know, Dak is going to miss the season. Then at that point, it probably would make a lot of sense to send Dak Prescott and a second-round pick to go get a quarterback that is going to make a difference for us right now. Going over to what we have at running back. Obviously, running backs, typically only a position in Dynasty in which we care if you are contending. But this isn't a contending team. We have Kyron, Connor, Javonte. We lose Zach Moss, so the depth there maybe is a little bit questionable. Where we definitely can't afford to sell a running back depth piece here. Going over to wide receiver, we have A.J. Brown, Tyreek, both should be very strong wide receiver ones rest of season. Obviously, both assets will be on the decline and both assets will be worth less in the offseason than they are right this second. We have Roma Dunze as a long-term piece, but we have Downs as a viable option here in the short term. I think that this is a dynasty team where you don't particularly really need to do much unless if we were to see something change about the Dak Prescott outlook, where if Dak were to be ruled out for the season, then at that point, it could make a lot of sense for us to go through and for us to potentially try to sell Dak Prescott in a 2-for-1 deal to go ahead and get a quarterback that's going to be viable this season by sending away Dak and our 2025 second. Now, I really hope that I'm looking at this incorrectly. I'm really hoping that we have a 2026 first and the picks just aren't loaded up, no, I think we traded away our 2026 picks, which just freaking sucks because I don't think this is a team that contends next year, to be honest with you. I think that this team's going to be in a considerable amount of trouble. But we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Obviously, we sold our 2025 first. It's about contending this season right now. So I think really the only thing is hoping that Dak's good to go. If he isn't, then at that point, we are going to go ahead and we'll probably be looking to pivot. And instead, of course, go and just trade for a viable quarterback for that super flex spot and be willing to include that 2025 second rounder. And I would love to tell you to plan on rebuilding once we get to the offseason. But obviously, it's a tough spot to say that, considering the fact that we've sold our 2026 picks. But I really do appreciate you and really hope I was able to help you out some. The issue is in Dynasty, when you sell your future picks the way that this team has, you really put yourself in a box and put yourself in a position where you don't have a lot of flexibility to make moves during the season. And also, you don't give yourself the ability to pivot over to a rebuild, which just makes life very hard in Dynasty. But Wazy coming out with another trade. Let me hook you up with a free trade question, my guy. That way, in case you send something else our way, it is free. But says, could request Ray Davis instead of Pat Frymuth for the handcuff. Would need to pick up a tight end for the Ingram bye. DJ Moore to Amari Cooper. Give me Amari Cooper. Tucker Kraft to Pat Frymuth. Give me Tucker Kraft. But if we have Evan Ingram, you can make an argument that you're potentially playing Ingram anyway over Kraft, so it may not necessarily matter. So I think that's a deal that you can make as well. I do view Amari Cooper as a very clear a start in your flex spot every week here, especially now that you have no Keon Coleman in this offense. Now, Freddie coming out with our next question. This is Brees and Cup for Taylor and A.J. Brown. I hate to tell you this, my guy. I wish I had some very nuanced take. The reality is this deal is just up to you. I mean, if you're looking at this, you can make an argument. I want Brees over Taylor, but I want Brown over Cup. So I think this is like the perfect example of just a personal preference type trade. Can y'all please spam the chat? What side would y'all rather have? Would you rather have Jonathan Taylor and A.J. Brown? Or would you rather have Brees Hall and Cooper Kupp? Are you going to go Jonathan Taylor and A.J. Brown or Brees Hall, Cooper Kupp? Please let me know in the live chat. We got 1 vote Kupp side, 2 votes Kupp side. AJ, AJ, Kupp, AJ. Kupp, AJ, Kupp. Kupp, AJ, Kupp. Does seem very much split. Like I said, I don't have massive preference. Regardless, if you really wanted to go get Taylor and A.J. Brown, I'm not going to fault you for it whatsoever. And also, I mean, you can even say that using the buys as a tie break isn't possible because both sides will have a player missing a week. Cali Kid, always happy to see us. Says, what's up, Mason? Not sure who to play tonight. The Chase Brown auto start this week. You also obviously have to auto start Brees. It seems like London's going to be good to go. We're going to go Puka and London. Down at tight end, we are going to play Evan Ingram. Neither tight end is going to have their quarterback. And then going down to the flex, it really comes down to like Tracy or Lamb. Tracy, you have a great matchup. You actually have a better offense than what Lamb will be in for this week, but I'm a very hard time telling someone to play Tyrone Tracy over CD Lamb, even if you have a bunch of injuries, of course, in Dallas. But Lamb could very easily be the correct call here. I don't know. Cali Kid coming out with another question. Asking again, should we play Chase Brown? For the love of God, yes, you play Chase Brown. We're going to go Chase Brown and Kyron Williams. And I hope I'm wrong with Chase Brown here. I have to play against Chase Brown in the Flock League. And It is not something that I'm excited about at all. Going over to wide receiver, London, Downs look like our two plays with the Lawrence injury. We're going to go ahead. We're going to take McBride, and down in the flex, we go James Conner. And obviously, if you were to get London to miss, then at that point, you could pivot over to Brian Thomas Jr. Now, Jordan Kidd coming out. This is Rico Dowdle and Nico Collins versus James Conner and Cooper Kupp. So Nico to Kupp, lateral move up to you, Dowdle to Conner, clear upgrade. If you needed to win in the short term to make the playoffs, I could very easily see you deciding to go ahead and take the Cooper Kupp and James Conner side of this. Because, I mean, if you are looking at Nico, not only are you not going to have him this week, but also on top of this, you're in a situation in which we can assume that you get 2 more weeks out of Kupp because Kupp's already through the bye week as well. I make a strong argument for the Kupp side. Nolan coming out with the start set says, do we trust Breece at running back 2? I'm leaning towards Debo at the flex, but if injuries keep him or Drake out, who's going in? So you for sure go with Breece Hall at RB2. And honestly, you're so strong down here in the flex, I think you very easily could consider going with the running back here. If you look at my rankings this week, in my flex ranks, we have... Okay, I'm looking at the wrong list. Hopefully I sent the right list to the editor. Dear God. We have Deebo Samuel as our not wide receiver. We have Deebo Samuel at 20 in the flex ranks. We have Montgomery at 24. So I'm currently with you having Montgomery as the flex. I'm sorry, Deebo is the flex over Montgomery in full PPR formats. But it is very close. I mean, both Montgomery and Dobbins look like great options. And yeah, if you were to say you have no Drake London, then obviously move Deebo up there to wide receiver. And then you put instead Montgomery down there in the flex. Okay. Now moving this over to our next question. This one coming out from Jay Dollarsign. Says, Leaning Jennings, Gesicki is available on the waiver wire. So obviously we wouldn't we wouldn't play Gesicki over McBride. We have no Higgins, Metcalf, Reed this week. I think we go with Jennings. The thing is, if you wanted to pick up Gesicki to play this week, you can make an argument that Gesicki is slightly better than what you're going to get with Juwan Jennings. The issue is who you're going to drop. Like, you have to drop somebody, and it's not like we are that excited about having Gesicki over, say, Ricky Pearsall in the long term. So it could be a viable move in the short term. I just don't necessarily know if it's a move that this team wants to make. So I think you just play Jennings. Mother Flocka coming out with the start set. Running back, we are going to go ahead. We're going to play DeAndre Swift relatively easily. Going down to tight end, you play Cade Otton easily. And then down here in the flex, I think it's either between Dell, Downs, or Flowers. Dell, you have no Nico. Downs, you have no Pittman. Flowers, we assume that Deontay Johnson's not really going to have a role this week. So it's not a super easy call here. Can y'all spam the chat? Who would y'all play between Downs, Dell, or Flowers? Looking at my flex rankings this week, we put Downs at 32 and Dell at 33, literally back-to-back in the flex ranks. I think all these options are really strong. We have Downs, Flowers, Downs, Dell, Flowers, Downs, Dell, Downs. And yeah, it should be a very high scoring game environment for Flowers here. So if you want to go Flowers, not going to fault you at all, but obviously just in case anything were to happen, I just play him there at wide receiver, move London down to the flex, knowing of course that Flowers plays on Thursday night. Now, Bello Ball is coming out with our next question. This is a dynasty trade where we are sending Lamb and getting back Puka and a second. I would probably rather have Puka for the rest of the season this year than Lamb if you're contending, and if you're getting the early second on it as well. I could very easily see an argument for the Puka side. Now, I will say my brain is broken in terms of dynasty at the moment. I have thought about dynasty 0 over the past 2 months. I've not made one single dynasty trade myself. So I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I'm grinding dynasty at the moment. And I know exactly what we should be doing. So I'll definitely send this over to like the FSE guys and get their thoughts on it, to be honest. But I could very easily see an argument to be made for Puka because redraft-wise, I'd rather have Puka rest of season. Obviously, Puka drafted in 2023, whereas Lamb drafted in 2020. So you get the age component as well. But I do like the quarterback situation more for Dallas in 2025 than I do the quarterback situation in Los Angeles in 2025. Where Stafford's great now, but Stafford's just so damn old. Motherflocka out again. Happy to see it. We're going to go with Burrow. I do think Purdy crushes with how good his matchup is, though. Going over to running back, you have to play Chuba Hubbard, especially the $33 million contract extension. We go Evan Ingram over Taysom, despite Lawrence being out. And then we probably get stuck playing Brian Thomas Jr. as well. But obviously, lowered expectations here across the board for these Jags with no Lawrence. Now, Zigster Dude coming out with our next question. This is Debo versus Smith and Judy. Judy's an absolute 0. I mean, Judy's barely better than a waiver wire option. So for me, I would just rather have Debo Samuel over Devonta Smith. Both players through their bye, or assuming that Debo is fully healthy coming out of the bye week as well. Now, Go Utes Tommy coming out with their next question. This is Dobbins versus Harrison. It's a double PPR format where we need a receiver. If you're getting 2 points per reception and you potentially have Gus Edwards coming into this offense, I think rest of season here, I would take Marvin Harrison Jr. Now, to be on the record, definitely this week, give me Dobbins, though. Now, Frank the Tank coming out with our next question. Here, running back, we are going to go with Breece Henry as auto starts. Wide receiver, Tyreek Puka are auto starts. It's just a nutso team. And then Chase Brown's an auto start down there in the flex. But obviously, since you have Chase Brown playing on a Thursday, you put Chase Brown up there at running back. And you move Breece down to the flex just in case something were to happen. And our next best option would probably be J.K. Dobbins, just in case we need to make any pivots later this week due to an injury. But let's move this over to our next question coming out from Bertrand says, do we start Gesicki in the flex over Brian Robinson or Rachaad White? I wouldn't. It seems like Brian Robinson should be good to go. He did get in the practice on Wednesday, practice again on Thursday. So I'm expecting that Robinson is A-okay here. So I think you just go ahead, throw him in at your second flex spot. Now, Nor coming out with our next question says, do I pick up Stafford because CJ has been struggling and throw Taysom in my flex? We are desperate. I would go Stafford over Stroud, knowing that you have no Nico Collins this week, or at least that's what the expectation currently is. So, yeah, I would go Stafford there. And then down in the flex spots, we have no Kenneth Walker this week, of course. We have no Judy. I actually want it fault you for wanting to go through and play Taysom. It's like Taysom versus Quentin Johnston. To be honest with you, if it was my team, full BBR format, I'd probably go Quentin Johnston over Taysom, but it is pretty damn close. I would probably bench Taysom, though. And then, yeah, I would play Stafford over Stroud, assuming that we have no Nico Collins. Now, John Hughes coming out says, we have Jordan Mason as well. Won't let me add him. Well, thank you, my guy. I'll be happy to check it out. We're going to go Burrow over Purdy. I'm going down to wide receiver. Yeah, there's no way in hell we're playing Jordan Mason here in the flex. We go with Terry McLaurin in our wide receiver slot, and then down there in the flex, I'm going to go with Swift if Edwards is going to be active for this game. Reports are saying that Gus Edwards feeling 100%. Do I expect Gus Edwards to be the starting running back here? Of course not. But what I would personally expect is us to probably see I don't know. A few touches siphoned away from J.K. Dobbins in comparison to what we've had as of late. Which, if we see that, that's probably enough for you to pivot over to DeAndre Swift. Where Swift, you have them as also similar to Los Angeles as like 7-point favorites here in Chicago. Now, of course, if anybody else wanted to get in any questions, you could always hit the link in the live chat that says ask a question here. Or you could just go over to flockfantasy.com and hit the button in the top right corner that says personalized advice. If you do that, you can send in a team review, trade question, start sit question, or a super message, whatever you are wanting. Now, if you wanted to send in a team review, I would highly recommend taking advantage of the offer that we have on Underdog Fantasy, just because it is going to be much cheaper to do so. And if you use promo code FLOCK over there on Underdog, you're going to be getting a 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000. Plus, you'll get a free Lamar Jackson pick, more than less than half a total yard for the game tonight. And on top of that, you're going to be getting a free team review in the live stream that we are doing every single night. Just to let you know and walk you through exactly how this works. What Underdog does is every single morning, they send me the list of all the email addresses that signed up to Underdog Fantasy from the day prior and made at least a $10 deposit. I send that CSV personally over to one of the developers. They go through and they manually, they run a little thing. I don't know what you call it, but it manually credits everybody who has an account matching one of those email addresses with a free team review voucher. And then at that point, you just go ahead and you'll have the free team review voucher in your account. And you go through the same process that you would normally for a team review. But when you get to the creator page, it will say that we are free, of course. Now, let's move this over to our next question. This is one of those free team reviews coming out from Nazo. So say, Mason, we just traded Gibbs, Tracy, and Pitts for Saquon and Bowers. Phenomenal trade. Let me know where we can improve, still trying to secure the chip. Well, I will say there are only two teams in this league that know what they are doing. The JSNs at Paris, and just give me my money as the clear juggernauts in this league. The rest of the league is garbage. If y'all want to see something funny, we can all laugh together. Can we all go laugh at Jose's team? Jose's wide receiver one's Khalil Shakir. Their quarterback one is Daniel Jones. Like, there are some teams that are just garbage in this league. You should be able to run away with this. You should be in a very, very good spot here. Starting off with what you have a quarterback. You're currently sitting with Hurts. Obviously, he's on the Mount Rushmore. You have the rushing upside. He's through the bye as well. So you are able to go through. You're able to start Jalen Hurts every single week regardless. You can use an extra roster spot over there at running back. Use the extra roster spot over there at wide receiver. Don't need to roster anybody else. Now, going over to what we have at running back. We are sitting with two locked and loaded RB1s every single week. We do have both the combo of Saquon Barkley as well as Breece Hall. We have Aaron Jones here as our third option. And we have Nick Chubb as a quality depth piece. Now, this is a half PPR format where you can start 4 receivers weekly. So I actually really like having these 3 viable starters at running back and the Nick Chubb just in case. Going over to wide receiver, we have 3 locked and loaded wide receiver ones rest of season. Obviously, we are a team in which we should be optimizing for the fantasy football playoffs. So we have A.J. Brown, Nico Collins, Puka Nacua. Presumably, we are going to be getting in Chris Olave for the playoffs potentially as well. Wide receiver depth, we have Roma Dunze, we have Jameson. Tight end, we have the elite tight end with Bowers. So realistically, what the hell am I supposed to tell you here? This is a phenomenal team. I think it's a team where it's going to be very difficult to make any moves. Typically on a team this strong, what we want to be optimizing with is we potentially want to be going through and looking to sell some of the short-term productive assets to go get injured players that should make a significant difference for the fantasy football playoffs. But we kind of already have those guys on our team when we're looking at Nico Collins and Chris Olave here. So realistically speaking, it's not like we have the additional depth assets that we can't afford to give away to go and get a player like Mike Evans as an example. So I think you're probably just sitting still with this team, to be honest. I wish I had more for you. I wish I had a bunch we could say, but just look at the freaking league analyzer. There are 2 teams crushing the rest of the league. The rest of the league looks like they have no idea what the hell's going on. And in a league like this, I really don't see a bunch of potential moves that we can make to be improving, to be honest, which sucks to be in that spot. But like your team Nate says, at this point, I think we're just focused in on making sure your league commish pays us the winnings at the very end. Now, let's move this over to our next question. This one is coming out from MJM. Here to start sit, running back Chase Brown, locked and loaded must-start player. Tight end, we will go Evan Ingram with lowered expectations with no Lawrence. And we are going to go James Conner. While, yes, it's frustrating that you don't see the rushing touchdowns going in James Conner's direction last week, still at the same time, it is a spot in which he has the 3-down workload. It should be a much closer game against the Jets, too. Now, D-Stock coming out with our next one says, should we drop Jake Ferguson for Gesicki? Play Hawk rest of season. We're playing Burrow. So, yes, I think if you were looking at the best option to play this week, that would be Mike Gesicki. Now, of course, with that being said, you can make an argument that for the fantasy football playoffs, if you somehow have Dak Prescott back and you have T. Higgins back, then at that point, maybe Jake Ferguson is a slightly better option. But I think you could go with Gesicki for now and Hawkinson for the long term. Bills Mafia, always happy to see you. And yeah, with James Conner still, I mean, for the flex, but it's always super simple for the flex. If you have one of these assets, obviously it's much tougher if you don't. But if you have one of those players that we can just safely assume they're in an average to an above average offense, they will have usage as a receiver. They will pretty much have a 3-down role. That is somebody that's very easy to start every single week. So we are going to go ahead. We will just play James Conner here. Now, season over coming out with our next start set. Running back, we are going to go with Ramadre over Dowdle. The offense is actually projected to be similar this week, funny enough. Wide receiver, we have no Olave. We have no Metcalf, so it friggin' sucks. You probably go Calvin Ridley. And then down in the flex, I hate to play Dowdle and Waddle, but what are you going to do? Not playing Taysom. Jordan Addison's had 1 game all season with more than 5 targets. So I think you probably just have to go ahead and you probably have to take Waddle. Now, your buddy Lucas coming out with our next question. Says this or Chase Brown for Brian Thomas Jr. Thanks. In my mind, if you are selling Chase Brown, you need to make sure that you are for sure getting a running back 1 price tag. Especially this week where you assume that you're not going to have Khalil Herbert with much of a role at all. Because obviously he's just barely been with the team here. It's a Thursday night game, which should be one of the most fun games this season. I think it will be tough if you don't just jam in Chase Brown, to be honest. Now, Brandon Myers says, I have no idea who to start. Running back, Chase Brown, Tyrone Tracy. Actually, I'm sorry, James Cook. You go with the running backs in good offenses. Tracy, I really want to get in based off workload and matchup. We're going to go London and Lamb. Don't feel super confident with that. And for the flex, we are going to go with Devonta Smith. And the pivot that you would look to make, if need be, is if you don't have either, say, CeeDee Lamb or Drake London playing this week, then you move Smith up into the starting lineup and you move Smith into one of those wide receiver slots, and then you move Tracy into the flex. That would be the pivot that you'd make if we have one of those guys as a surprise inactive. Phil, always happy to see us, says, this team has seen better days. We need some help. Dak's out. Might have panicked. Any tips are appreciated. Well, I would go presumably with May, where you do have some rushing upside with May, of course. Oh, we have the Chase Brown breakout. You're chilling. We're going to go with Breece and Chase Brown. Wide receiver, London looks like he's good. I think we're going to go Smith over Brian Thomas with no Lawrence. Tight end, Andrews, Henry, both relatively close. But you have had Henry as a much better option since Drake May's taken over here in New England. And then going down to the flex, I think you just take the 3-down running back. I think you have a very good team. I think based off the injury that you had to Zach Moss, and now it being a very easy spot to just assume that Chase Brown is a 3-down running back and one of the best offenses in the NFL, it'd be very difficult to say that this is anything but a great roster, to be honest. Let's go ahead and let's move this over to our next question. This is coming out from Brady Evans. Here, this is a trade where we're sending Darnold, Henry, Harrison, Higgins for Burrow, Gibbs, and Chase. So Henry to Chase, a lateral move, up to you. Harrison to Gibbs, massive upgrade. Darnold to Burrow, massive upgrade. We're paying Higgins to get it done. Yeah, I'm going to go with the Burrow, Gibbs, and Chase side of things. But again, I do want to reiterate my personal values. I don't see like it being a big downgrade from Derrick Henry to Jamar Chase. If you think it is, then obviously it's a little bit different for you. Okay. Now let's move this over to our next question. This one is coming out from 8K47. We're going from Kelsey to Bowers, which is a lateral move, up to you. Both elite tight ends, both of the Mount Rushmore of tight ends. Going from Jacobs to Kamara, clear upgrade. Swift to Pollard's a downgrade for me, but it's not massive. So yeah, for me, I think we're going to go ahead. We are going to take the Kamara, Bowers, and Pollard side of this. I mean, you're getting the best player in the deal with Kamara. And it's not like it's some massive downgrade going from Kelsey to Bowers. Now, Real Zay Flowers coming out says, need wide receiver help with Lawrence gone and need a little running back help. Thanks. Thank you. For sure, just play Chase Brown. Chase Brown's a locked and loaded must-start player every week here. And wide receiver, this is much closer now that you have no Lawrence. I still probably go with Brian Thomas because if you look at these wide receiver options, it's not like I can say, oh, go Calvin Ridley. Brian Thomas is going to be in a bad offense with no Lawrence. Even without Lawrence, the Jags should still probably be a better offense than what you have in Tennessee. And then going down to the flex, we are going to go with 3-down running back, either Tracy or Hunt. Really, it is going to be up to you here, to be completely honest. If I'm looking at them in my flex rankings this week, I have both as must-start players. I have Hunt at 30 in the flex rankings and Tracy at 34, with the expectation, of course, that the Chiefs are a better offense. But this week, that's by no means a guarantee because of the matchup that Tracy has going up against, obviously, a very bad Panthers defense. Now, Fantasy Football 9 coming out with their next question. Says, Higgins killing me at wide receiver 2. I'd have Achane and Mostert. So going for Bijan to Mixon, upgrade for me. We're getting Amari essentially by trading away Algier. 100% go make this move. You get a similar amount of games played for both running backs going into the future. Assume both fully stay healthy. Both are 3-down workhorses, must-start players every single week. Both have red zone roles and slight receiving roles as well. Yeah, absolutely no-brainer to just pick up Amari for effectively free here. Now, Tiny Dancer. Love the name, as always. Going through, looking at this, we need to submit a starting lineup. Oh, yeah, you for sure go with Kareem Hunt over someone like Rachaad White here. Wide receiver, I'm still going to go Lamb over Hopkins. It's not super easy. Obviously, you have significantly better quarterback play for Hopkins. But also, you do have a pretty tough matchup for Hopkins this week going up against the Broncos. And then down in the flex, yeah, you just go ahead and you keep Puka Nacua. So, don't think we changed really anything there. Unless if the only thing you could possibly change in my mind is if you wanted to trade. I mean, if you wanted to start, say, Hopkins over Flowers. I think you could if you really wanted to. Vexus says, start 2. We need Brown, Flowers, Ladd, Debo. Out of these two guys, I'm going to go Brown and Debo. Let's just make sure that this is. So maybe that was a different team. Going over to what we have here, you go Achane at running back. Wide receiver, we're going to go with Chase. Tight end, we go Kelsey. And then down in the flex, we're going to go ahead. We're going to take Debo Samuel. But yeah, for sure, make sure you're starting Chase Brown. I just want to. So, I mean, we said it last week. We're going to say it again this week over and over and over again. If you have Chase Brown, you play Chase Brown. For the love of God, if you have Chase Brown, you play Chase Brown. Now, Bajor's coming out, says, we have Achane and JT. Wide receivers are Adams, T, and DK Metcalf. CMC to Breece Hall, lateral move up to you. Adams to Malik Neighbors, clear upgrade. You're getting Amari for free on this. To be honest with you, I'm going to go Neighbors, Breece, and Amari. Again, I do want to reiterate. Obviously, we had CMC as that buy low candidate, I want to say 3 weeks ago. But still, with that being said, there is inherently some risk here. Like, effectively, there's no risk when you're looking at Breece. We know what Breece is. We've had some bad games. We've seen a low floor in certain individual weeks. But from a workload perspective, we've seen the receiving usage. The offense does have hope to maybe improve slightly here. And then Neighbors is leading the NFL in targets per game. Now, HRD says, should we start Dobbins or Mixon week 10? Appreciate you, my guy. I'm definitely going to go Mixon. I understand where you're coming from, of course, if you are looking at respective game environments. The Chargers are favored by about a touchdown. It's a really good matchup against Tennessee. Whereas Mixon has a tough matchup against a very good Detroit Lions rush defense. But I still think we go Mixon in the tough matchup. Gosh, the girl is laying down. And one thing that's, let me see if I can show you her. Look at this angel. Got the little girl cam down there. She's not doing it right now, but she does a thing that when she sleeps, she'll be laying there and goes. But she sleeps with me in bed every night. And one thing that is annoying is she will also twitch. Like, I'll be reading my book and her leg just starts kicking me. And when she twitches, like as she sleeps, it like twitches fast. Okay, but anyway, yeah, go Mixon over Dobbins. Now, Ryan coming out with our next question. It says, want to play Chase Brown, not sure if we have the room. Okay. I'm telling you, you for sure have the room for Brown here. I'm looking at quarterback. We are going to go with Baker over May. It's not the easiest of calls. I don't know how many times you added these players, my guy. I actually think maybe I know what happened. So, like, say you manually put this in and you go, okay, well, I need Mason to know that I'm looking for, he needs to choose a running back in this group. He needs to choose a running back in this group. He needs to choose a flex here. All you effectively have to do is put them in one, and the entire system's going to identify, okay, this is a running back. So that player is available in every single one. So you don't need to keep on placing them in over and over and over again. But we will go Taylor and McCaffrey here at running back. Wide receiver, you go Puka and Dell with no Nico. Going over to tight end, obviously, Kelsey. And down in the oh my gosh, we have Bijan. So never mind. I guess you don't have room. I guess you have to friggin' bench Chase Brown, which is nuts. Go trade for an elite level quarterback with how strong your running back room is. Now going over to our next question from Not Shook, says injuries at receivers between Gibbs and Tracy. You definitely go Gibbs. Kyron, Gibbs, the must-start options. And we're going to go CMC here as well. Wide receiver, we go with Downs and Ladd pretty easily. And then down in the flex, we go CMC. I mean, it sucks. Obviously, you want to get Tracy in with this being the best matchup you can ask for going up against a very soft Panthers defense, but still. Now, Intel outside coming out says too many options. Not a bad thing, I suppose. It is funny. Like, if I look at the Flock League right now, I'm one of the very few teams that has like a viable player down on the bench. Now, of course, I've tried to sell some depth to go get an upside shot for later in the season. And these fools don't want to pay the price. But anyway, it's besides the point. Here, running back, we have CMC and Gibbs as the options. You want to go Brown over CMC. I'm not going to fault you. Wide receiver, we're going to get that running back in the flex anyway. Wide receiver, we're going to go ahead and we are going to take London, and I'm going to go Terry over Flowers. Really good spot for Flowers, though, which should be a very high-scoring game. And then we're going to go with Jahmyr Gibbs down in the flex, and then we put Chase Brown in there at running back, obviously with him playing tonight, just in case anything does happen. And us needing to pivot, we don't want to put Thursday night guys in the flex. Eli Davis coming out with a question. This is Jacobs and Worthy versus Deebo Samuel. I'm going to go with Jacobs. I'm very excited to go through and trade for Deebo Samuel if you can, but ultimately, Jacobs isn't a very good offense, and you have a 3-down workload. So you have pretty much no concerns when it comes to Josh Jacobs. At least I have no concerns when it comes to Jacobs. Now, X Rugza says, I'm stuck on my wide receiver 2 in a flex. Flex and tight end. Well, wide receiver, Jefferson, auto start, of course. We go Pickens here, wide receiver 2 with the Lawrence injury. Oh, dear God. Tight end, we go McBride. You may even put, no, we go with Chase Brown. So never mind. I'm sorry. I was going to say maybe we flex a tight end with how strong our tight end room is. But we're going to go Chase Brown at running back because he plays on Thursday night just in case anything happens. We'll put Saquon Barkley here in the flex. But yeah, phenomenal team. And honestly, I think obviously as Cade Otton is an elite tight end at the moment, probably can't overlook the idea of trading him and getting an upgrade elsewhere. T. Dudley says, full PPR flex decision, Chase Brown or Brian Tyler. For sure, Chase Brown. Not even remotely close. Again, I do want to reiterate, if you have Chase Brown, you play Chase Brown. Let me even see what the underdog pick is on Chase Brown this week. Chase Brown, they have him at higher, lower, 83.5 total yards. They have him higher, lower, 13.35 fantasy points. If you look at Jamar Chase, I don't know. Why the hell did they not have a receiving yardage mark out for Chase? Why? But Yeah, for the love of God, if you have Chase Brown, you go through and you play Chase Brown. Do not think about it. And obviously, if y'all wanted to check out any of these underdog picks, y'all can find the link in the live chat. You can find the link in the description. Promo code FLOCK will hook you up with a 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000. Plus, at the same time, you will get a free Lamar Jackson pick for tonight's game, more than less than half a total yard. And on top of that, you're going to be getting a free team review in the live stream that we're doing every single night as well. Just make sure that you use promo code FLOCK on Underdog Fantasy and then set up an account on flockfantasy.com with the same email address as your account on Underdog. That way I'm able to credit you with that free team review voucher. Now, Cal Goated says, point per carry league. Are we starting Chase Brown or Tyrone Tracy this week? Obviously, Tracy has a phenomenal matchup here, but for the love of God, you start Chase Brown. To be honest with you, I think Chase Brown's the better running back, and I think we can all agree he's in a much better offense. Please go with Brown. Now, B Witness coming out with our next question. This is Tillman versus Olave. I'm going to go with Olave. With Olave, it's not a guarantee that he plays again this season. Be very honest with that. And the earliest I think we would see him come this season is week 13 after the week 12 bye. But maybe I'm just a hater. I don't view Tillman as a player that is going to be an option that wins fantasy football playoffs for people. Now, Al Neal coming out with our next question says, was offered this trade. Should we accept or counter for more? In the short term, wide receiver, we would be playing Flowers, Thomas, and that's it. You can make this move if you are a playoff team. I mean, if you look at Evans, the expectation is he should be an every week top 10 wide receiver option once he is back in this offense, which presumably could be in week 12, which sounds like a while, but he was going to miss week 11 regardless due to the bye. Harrison's missing week 11 too. So Harrison, you only get one extra game out of him in comparison to Evans. And at the same time, you have no Godwin in an offense that has a lot more passing volume. So I think I go Mike Evans here, but again, I do want to reiterate, it obviously looks a lot better if you are a playoff team versus if you're not, then it probably would be a lot tougher. Now, moving over to our next question. This one coming out from Bertrand says, I'm 7-2. And the guy trading is trying to get a win in the playoffs. I'm worried about the injuries. He throws in Mason too. Kyron to CMC, clear downgrade. Aaron Jones to Nico Collins, clear upgrade. If you're 7-2 and we are truly just thinking about the fantasy football playoff upside, we're there. Obviously, Nico Collins can be a top 5 wide receiver. CMC can be a top 5 running back. Then, yeah, I think you go ahead and I think you take the CMC side, especially if you're going to get Jordan Mason on it. It's not the easiest call, though. Just because, again, while CMC has it in the range of outcomes where he could potentially come out and be the number 1 player in fantasy football yet again, he could just completely crush. It's not inherently a guarantee. Yeah. Bertrand in the chat says it's tough. I 100% agree with you, my guy. If you weren't a playoff team, I would probably say no. because you'd probably be taking on a lot of risk unnecessarily. But since you are a playoff team, I think you can make this move. Now, Ginger Baby, always happy to see you here. Going down to the flex, we have no Walker this week. We have no Jacobs this week. We have no Diggs. We have no Evans. We have no Godwin. You've just been brutalized. You have no Bowers. What the hell are you supposed to do? Are we really starting Jonathan Brooks? There's no way we're starting Brooks, are we? Can't start Khalil Herbert. Can't start Tez Walker. Can't start A.T. Perry, Jordan Whittington. How is your team this injured? Can't start even Tucker Kraft. Can't start Juju Smith-Schuster. Can't start Hollywood Brown. Look at all these options that we have down here that aren't viable. Players that will not play this week. Kenneth Walker, Josh Jacobs, Stephon Diggs, Mike Evans, Juju Smith-Schuster, Hollywood Brown, Chris Godwin, Tucker Kraft, Brock Bowers. If Jonathan Brooks is good to go, you probably go ahead and you probably say F it and take Jonathan Brooks here. But obviously, we will have lowered expectations with the $33 million contract that they decide to give Chuba Hubbard. So it does seem like Hubbard should have that pretty large role still this week. Hate it, but you have, who else do you have that you could go with? Drew Moody coming out. This is Ladd and Hopkins versus Leggett and Metcalf. Metcalf's the best player in the deal. Hopkins and Ladd are the second and third best players in the deal. I can't see the rest of the roster. The scenario in which you make this deal is if you don't need to start either Hopkins or Ladd right now. If you're telling me that both Hopkins and Ladd are on your bench and it's like a 10-team, 2 wide receiver, 1 flex format, then yeah, it can't hurt just going through. And taking the upgrade you have in the long term. But if it was like a 12-team league where you start multiple flex spots and you're having to start both Hopkins and Ladd this week, I don't think you're getting enough value at that point to make the deal. Now, Connor coming out says, traded Chase Brown and Chuba Hubbard for Kenneth Walker, and now we're stuck. Don't mind the deal in the long term if you think Khalil Herbert has a role here. Are we going to have to play Jameson? I think you probably have to play Jameson Williams. Obviously, with Jameson, before the suspension even, this is a boom bust wide receiver that's pretty much just a field stretching option. It's not like you're going to be able to consistently rely upon him going into the future. You should have some pretty big spike weeks. You should have some duds at the same time. But you can kind of say the same thing with the other options down here at the bottom, considering the fact, of course, that you have both no Reed and no Walker this week. Now, moving over to our next question here. This one's coming from Mother Flocka. Here down in the flex, we are looking at potentially no Pittman this week. Potentially no McMillan this week. I think I'd probably go Ricky Pearsall. Now, obviously, if we get a full practice for Pittman, and it seems like Pittman is going to be good to go against the Bills, then maybe you can go ahead and pivot. But Pittman missed practice both today and yesterday. So it kind of does look to be a stretch at this point for him to go out there and play. Okay, so let's mark that complete. And I think we should be through the majority of the questions on the site. Let me see if there are any interesting underdog picks. If y'all took any underdog picks, please let me know in the live chat. Like I said, what I was interested in earlier this week, I was interested in the Lamar Jackson higher than 1.5 passing touchdowns. But actually, since then, you've seen that go down to where you're getting hit with a 0.9x multiplier. So I'm probably a little bit less excited about that. I was excited about the Jalen Hurts higher than 195.5 passing yards. But now that's gotten bumped up to plus 197.5. So I'm a little less excited about that. I do think that Gesicki is definitely a viable start. But at the same time, I wouldn't fault you at all for going Gesicki fewer than 52.5 receiving yards. With everybody on him, obviously, but maybe the big play isn't there this week. And you don't see this defense just go through and triple cover Chase, which is what essentially led to the big Gesicki touchdown last week. But let me move this over. I don't see anybody in the chat that has any underdog picks that they like. But, of course, if y'all wanted to check any of these out, you can find the link to Underdog Fantasy down in the description as well as the live chat. Hunter wants us to look at Keaton Mitchell. I'd be happy to take some Keaton Mitchell lower thens. Keaton Mitchell sitting at higher lower 13.5 rushing yards. Actually, I'll probably stay away there. Yeah, again, like I said, Keaton Mitchell's not super interesting here. If you wanted to go with higher than 13.5 rushing yards, you do you, but you shouldn't care about him in your fantasy league. Boom Crazy says start Deontay Johnson or Brian Thomas Jr. For the love of God, if y'all are starting Deontay Johnson, get him out of your lineup right this second. Deontay Johnson is higher, lower, 20.5 receiving yards. Let me be very clear. Deontay Johnson is higher, lower, 20.5 receiving yards on Underdog Fantasy. If you think he's going to have a good game, go take the higher than 20.5 receiving yards. But for the love of God, do not put this guy into your starting lineup. You cannot start Deontay Johnson this week. Can't even think about it. And obviously, if you wanted to check out any of those picks, you can find the link in the live chat. You can find it in the description. Promo code FLOCK will get you hooked up with that free Lamar Jackson pick. More than less than half a total yard for the game tonight. And also, you'd be getting a free team review in the live stream that we're doing every single night as well. Just make sure that you set up an account on flockfantasy.com with the same email address. Is what will happen is Underdog's going to send me your email address tomorrow morning. And then we will go through and we are going to accredit an account on flockfantasy.com that has that email address with the free team review voucher. So make sure you have an account with the same email address so I can hook you up with your free team review voucher. And that way you can go ahead and submit your free team review on the site. And I think that should be it. I really do appreciate you. I'm wishing you all the best of luck. We are going to have kickoff here in just a couple minutes. Let me just double check to make sure we have no more questions on the site. Looks like we have no more questions over there on flockfantasy.com. So thank you again, ladies and gentlemen. Really do appreciate you. Really hope that I was able to help you out in some way with this. And really hope we get to see you out with the live stream after the game tonight.